everybody. I am so excited today to be talking to author Emily Carpenter, and her newest book is called The Weight of Lies, which she has right there with her. Look at that cover. Ugh. Ugh. You know, having already know what happens, I love the cover. But thank you so much for talking to me today, Emily.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
This book is so good, okay? I listened to it on my little Audible, and I actually meant to look up who did the narrating. I usually look it up, and I forgot.
Well, I know. Yeah, actually, she narrated my first book, Burying the Honeysuckle Girls. Her name is Kate Orsini, and I think she's fabulous. And I'll tell you a little story, like how she ended up narrating the books. So my Imprint is Lake Union, and they send a questionnaire to the authors before they start producing the audiobook. And they basically just kind of ask your opinion about, you know, what you see happening in the narration and just kind of the nuances of what you'd like to see. And so for my first book, the main character was Southern. She was from Alabama. And if you talk to any people from the South, you know that, like, there's nothing that drives us more crazy than people who, actors who do a Southern accent badly. Yes, it's just like fingernails off the board. So I was trying to be very polite in my questionnaire, and I said, you know, there's all these Southern accents from the state of Alabama, and they're different, like the very Southern accent and the mid, you know, state accent and the North Alabama mountain accent. They're all slightly different. So I said, please get a narrator who was Southern. And they actually found a woman, and they said, you know, here she is. And she's from Talladega, Alabama. So I said, you know, that's perfect. And she did a fabulous job. So I requested her on The Weight of Lies.
Interesting. You know what? I just saw, kind of a side note, but I saw on Facebook, Jimmy Kimmel was on a talk show, and they took 5 people from the audience, because it was in New York, from different boroughs, and they had him pick, and he got it right.
Oh my gosh.
So when you say that about Alabama, I was so impressed. I'm like, you know, you hear a New York accent and you're like, New York, I can't say it's Queens or the Bronx or Brooklyn, or he had a sentence that they had to read, and then he picked it.
I mean, that's a stunning ear. Right. I don't know that I could do that in Alabama, but I felt like, you know, I think Kate really understood those slight differences in the dialect. So I was thrilled with what she did on both books.
I mean, I was going to say, you know, listening to her, I would be driving and I just break out in chills over your story. Like, there were just different parts. And I have to say, so, you know, the main character, Meg, I really related to her, and I had a difficult relationship with my mother. She passed away in 2011, but I really start with, like, especially in the beginning, when she's really talking about their relationship, and you know, it was different, but it was weirdly, like, resonated with me. You know?
Wow.
Yeah, so I think that, you know, you did such a great job with that relationship between the two of them. And my mom wasn't famous and didn't write anything and wasn't, you know. But it was a mother-daughter relationship that I think anybody can relate to as a daughter. And do you have any daughters?
No, I have 3 sons.
3 sons. Okay. I have 6 children. I have 4 boys and 2 girls. And I know, because of my relationship with my mom, I treaded on, you know, they're both in their 20s now, but, like, raising them, it's such a different, boys are easy, like, I don't know. Boys are just like, they're always going to like their mom, right? Like,
right. Well, yes, you hope so. That's the goal. But I love hearing that, because, yes, while Meg was in this sort of, her life circumstances are nuts. I mean, you know, nobody is going to relate to this character on that level. really. Maybe Stephen King's kids. But, even then, like, Stephen King is a good person, right? But so Meg's mother is really, she's just not a real natural, warm, giving, loving mother.
Right.
She's not all bad, but I felt like what was interesting to me with that was, Meg had a lot of anger, and I think it was hard to separate. She's an unreliable narrator on the level that it was kind of hard to separate, like, what were those bitter feelings that maybe weren't accurately depicting the relationship. Like, it probably wasn't quite as bad as she was remembering. And I think we all have our memories aren't always exactly accurate.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to diminish certainly any kind of abuse or anything, but I think sometimes we do remember the bad and we forget the good in our relationships with our moms, and it can just be very fraught with all these emotions. So
Right, exactly. What I loved about, I'm sorry, I'm so enthusiastic about this, but what I loved about what you did was that, and I heard myself, it was so crazy, is that her mom couldn't say right things.
Ever.
So even, like, and I remember that with my mom, it's like, what I heard her saying, I was like, yeah, when she was trying. And now I can look back, now that she's gone, and be like, oh, I think she was trying. Actually, I think she was trying at that point. But you can't hear it when you're too involved in, blame. And you're blaming. Yes. And she was blaming. And, of course, it's hard to feel bad for Meg. You feel bad for Meg, but then, like you said, it's like feeling bad for... I was trying to think of somebody as her status of what you made her in the writer world, Mm-hmm. And you know who I came up with in my... Danielle Steel.
Well, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That they're that big. She had 9 kids, or has 9 kids. She's still around.
Yeah.
And I always wondered, how'd she do 9? I have 6, okay? How'd she do 9 kids and write the books that woman wrote, just especially in her early years? Like... monthly, I felt like she was coming out with a new book, but that's what I kept envisioning her as, like this Danielle Steel figure, where people know Danielle Steel. She's very famous. She's not an actress. She's an author, and we didn't really have that before in crossover, that they're celebrity author at that time. So in my world,
she's like royalty, and it's like her name, Danielle Steel, has become something more than just the name of a person who writes books.
Right.
I mean, there's so
glamorous, and
there's just glamour around it. So that's a great person.
Yeah, so that's what I kept envisioning. And I do no spoilers. Never, ever. Because I want the readers to experience it. Exactly. So with this book this morning, I was like, okay, because there's so much I'm not going to say. And, especially when you have thriller books. Like with romance books, it's a little bit different. But this has everything, and you did such a great job telling this story, and you blew me away, like chapter after chapter, because I think I'd know what was going to happen, and then I didn't know, and then I started loving characters, and then I was like, oh, now I don't like them so much, and then I started like...
Yeah, so, and I love that too. I mean, I love kind of playing with the reader's expectations and really trying to think about, so where does the reader expect this to go, and how can I kind of turn that on its ear and kind of play with the feelings? I also like to create characters that are not all bad and all good, just like real people. Right. I hope that they feel really real. And I mean, I know that sometimes in life, I'm not one of these people that has like this, unerring radar for a good person versus a bad person. Like I'm always like, so what do I think about this person? Like I'm never completely sure. Yeah. So I like doing that in my storytelling as well. Keep you on your toes.
Yeah, and it was really cool how you did that. Her books Francis's books then were this real life thing, and the way, I don't know, just the way you wove that story together like that. Like I said, I was driving, and I would be driving and just get, like, something would happen, and I'd just break out in chills, and it was, so I can't say enough about how much I like this book, as you can see. I love it. But I found something out really cool when I was on your website. You were involved in soap opera world. Right.
Yes. Yeah. Do you want to hang on 1 second? My phone is ringing. I forgot to turn the ringer off my phone.
Go ahead. Turn it off.
Okay. Oh my goodness, that's like interview 101.
I couldn't even hear it, but it doesn't matter. I didn't hear mine. I turned mine off too, but it doesn't matter. This is all real, so we don't have to pretend. But so you were in soap opera world. Now I'm 52. I grew up on loving soap operas. I mean,
yes,
it is not really a thing anymore. I mean, they are starting to die. But people that are my age, like, running home from school for General Hospital. When I started working, it was The Young and Restless, Bold and Beautiful, as long as I could fit in my lunch hour according to, Now, I never watched As the World Turns or Guiding Light, because they were on when other things were on. So, and at that time, it was huge. It was huge. You got stuck on this, one, you couldn't, like, deviate. You can't flip back and forth. You get too invested in these people, Yeah. But at the time, my ex-husband's family owned a newspaper, back in the 90s. And I said to him, I see everybody doing these little articles about catching up on their soap operas. Sometimes I read them too. In the bigger newspapers, they owned a very small town newspaper. And I said, you should let me write a little soap opera article on the soap operas that I watch, and I could catch everybody up. And he's like, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. I'm like, okay. And so it didn't happen. But then I saw, because I knew that they were doing it, but I was going to be a little bit more extensive and a little bit more dramatic in my writing.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember, because it was so long ago. I can't remember what the word limit was.
Right, like there was a little, like you'd get it on a Sunday or something, and it was like 3 sentences, so, and I'd be like, what? What?
It wasn't much, and you had to pick the A stories that you felt like most of the people were going to be interested in. And, it was just, but it was a really good training for me to kind of deconstruct those scripts and to understand what that even meant, an A story and a B story. And, what were the most compelling events that happened, or the most compelling cliffhangers. And it was great. It felt, a little bit like getting an MFA in storytelling. And I will say too, that those script writers, those, writers were so talented, so gifted, and especially with dialogue, because really by the time, they wrote a script for a show, the big story arc had already been decided upon, so their job was to write dialogue and to make the scene happen, to make it crackle and
to build up to the story.
And pop, yes.
Right.
And, but to really just pull out those human elements of the characters that the fans loved. So, I mean, I was just mesmerized with, there was one particular husband and wife duo, and they were just fantastic with dialogue. They would just write this like snappy banter, and I was so jealous. So
I know. And you know what? I watch, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And Eileen Davidson is on that show.
Yeah, from Y&R. Yeah.
From Y&R. And now she's on Days of Our Lives. Is Days of Our Lives still?
Is she?
I don't know. She was doing, at the time of the taping of this, and this is, like I said, these are my movie stars, soap opera people. But anyway, at the time of the taping of it, she was on both at the same time. And she would show, like, the stacks of dialogue that she'd be like, I'm back on Y&R this week, and I've got this. And then I'm on Days of Our Lives, and I got this. So I'm a little busy today. And I used to be like, Oh my God. Like those soap opera stars have lines that no wonder they use that as, I'm sure, of course, there are lifelong ones that stay with the soaps, but a lot of people branched off of that and went into movies because it's a good place to learn.
Yeah.
They would say that,
Yeah.
it was a great place to learn how to act because you had so much dialogue. It's all
Yeah.
dialogue,
I don't know how they did it. I mean, how they do that, memorize that much dialogue. I don't know.
And I don't know how she was two characters at the same. That's because she does what she does good, but
she's good at what she does.
She's good at what she does. But I thought that was so cool when I was reading your paragraph and you started talking. I was like, that's what I wanted to do.
You had a great idea. You really did.
Thank you. At least somebody could tell me I had a great idea because I
had a great idea. It would have been huge.
It would have been huge in this tiny little newspaper.
Almost huge.
And now we see where soap operas have kind of gone, so maybe not so much, but
Yeah, I like to say that. So I was actually at CBS. Mm-hmm. It was CBS, which was they were the ones that aired Guiding Light and As the World Turns, and
I did Young and the Restless and Bold and the Beautiful.
Right, and they were taped out in LA. Those two.
I thought they were. That's right, because she couldn't write because she was in LA. I was thinking Y&R was in New York, but it's not. So.
Yeah, so Guiding Light and World Turns were taped in New York, and that's where I was at CBS in New York. But anyway, I like to say that I put them out of business.
No, that's not good. Who were the main? Was there any main actor that went on from there that we know? Because I didn't see them.
There. You know who I always see? Yes, there were.
I'm sure there were. It's just I can't at the top of my head.
It's hard to call them to mind. And when I was there, I know, Meg Ryan was on World Turns, but that was before my time. But
right.
Who I always see in movies now, he was in the last Avengers movie, is Frank Grillo. He's fantastic. He was in Guiding Light, and I can't really, but it's just so funny. Every once in a while, I'll see somebody and I'll be like, "Oh, that's
because you got to be around that. You were on sets and got to be there, and that's so cool."
Not a lot. Mostly, I was in the office at CBS, but occasionally I was around and on set, and of course, those were the most exciting days. So.
Right, it's so cool. Anyway, I find that part really cool. I was like, I can't wait to talk to her about that. But you have a new book coming out.
I do.
Every Single Secret, and that's coming out next year. So you've been writing. I mean, now that you have this life, you're really writing these novels very a year at a time, right?
Yeah. It's definitely become a full-time job for me, which is fantastic. And what I always wanted, and it was kind of the goal. It's been an adjustment to kind of rearrange my life a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of, the schedule tends to be about a book a year. That's the way it's been so far. And so I have Every Single Secret coming out in May of 2018. And then I have another book, which is as of yet untitled, coming out in the spring of 2019. So I'm working on that as well while I'm finishing up copy edits on Every Single Secret. So yes, it's and learning how to work on 2 books at once.
I was going to say that's
and then what happens? This horrible thing happens that you get an idea for the next book while you're working on 2 other books, and you're like, no, stop, not. Yeah. And so, you really should be concentrating on these other books. But then when you go to bed at night, you're lying in bed and all these ideas, great ideas and characters are creeping in. It's like, no, just hold that thought.
Hold that thought. That's when you got to write down, you got to get up and you got to write it down and you got to put it away. But what kind of a writer are you? Do you do you do comprehensive outlines, or do you just start, sit down with an idea and just start writing it out?
I use kind of coming from how I started off in the soaps, and then what I really wanted to do was write screenplays for movies. I mean, I wanted to be in the movie business, and being a being a young lady, I didn't have a lot of understanding that was a really tough business to get into.
Right. I did see that you used, well, that, that's a whole other art form.
It really is. But so what I did take away from those days of writing screenplays and entering contests and all that kind of thing, I follow a 3-act screenplay structure, and so it is an outline. It's a general outline, and it's kind of like a tent with tent poles. And what I like to do before I get started with a book is to make sure all the tent poles are in place, and so that I actually have like the foundation of a good story, because sometimes you can come up with an idea or a hook or setting, but it doesn't have enough to really carry you through 300 pages or the year that it takes to write it. And I start off with that kind of very basic outline, and I know in general where things are going, and sometimes it changes, but not always.
Not always. Sometimes, you get halfway into it and you're like, maybe something different is going to happen here.
Yeah.
But that is one thing. I've interviewed a lot of screenwriters, and I've read a lot of screenwriting books just because I like to write. It interests me. It interests me how a story, when I watch a movie, I like to say, oh, I know it's coming. Because you know what? I have grandchildren, and I noticed that Disney is so good on their structure. Like, they stick to the 3, you can see it. Where, easier. I don't know because it's a cartoon or because they're doing it for little kids, or, it has to be that basic. But I took one of my grandsons to see Moana, and he was 3, and he's like, this is boring. I'm like, no, this is going to be the good part. Trust me, 5 minutes.
And now.
But, it's kind of fun to see that that happens, and I liked being able to do that.
Well, and there's an element of comfort in kind of your brain kind of knows the rhythm of a story and where it's going, and when something exciting needs to happen, and when you need to pull back and be quiet for a moment, or, when the climax comes. So there's all that, but then, there's room too to kind of
move around
a little bit. But, and those are more, they're the books and the movies that are experimental. I don't really do that. I like following kind of a general structure.
Right. Well, you could write these screenplays. You could write these books into screenplays. I love on your website how you said you were like, well, at least I was turned down by, really famous people, because
right. Great. I was turned down by the greats. Steven Spielberg. Yeah. So
that's awesome.
Good. Used to be great. He's not so great anymore, but at the height of his greatness, he turned me down. So
right, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Your website's a lot of fun. People need to check it out, because I love when I come across a fun website, not just like, here's this, here's that. I was like going through it. I'm like, this is a fun website. So whoever did it for you, yay. Good that.
She's good. Yeah.
Well, anyway, hold up that book again. I want to show everybody the cover. I love the cover. Did you have any say on that? Because it's awesome.
Listen, I have to tell you, so the guy that designed this, his name is Rex Bonamelli, and so my publisher, the way they do covers is they're like, oh, well, your cover designer roughed out like 4 or maybe 5 covers, and then they show you all of them. And when I tell you every single cover he did was like, oh my gosh, just stunning. I mean, this guy is really, really talented, and I feel really lucky that he did the cover. But this one was just, so this one was like, the print up here that's covering her eyes is actual print from the book within the book, Kitten.
Right. Which I loved, yes.
And I didn't realize it at first, but when I looked, I was like, oh my gosh, there's, cover. And then, the ripped pages. And then my favorite part, which was there's just the slightest blood splatter, blood spatter on the letters. If you look really closely.
See, I couldn't tell that. I did see, because I was listening to the Audible, I did see the text.
Yeah.
Now I see it. Yep.
So that was my favorite moment. I was like, there's blood spatter on my title. Right. That's awesome.
I know. You're like, and that leads to like, okay, her eyes, like, what is going on,
yes.
and
yeah.
which is like the whole.
I just felt like it was the perfect cover. I couldn't have been happier. So there really wasn't much, they tweaked it a little bit in terms of how the woman was positioned on the page. But I mean, when somebody like Rex designs your cover, you're just kind of like, yes, that's beautiful. Thank you.
I know. People are always saying to me, oh, you like all the covers. You always talk about the covers. I'm like, I am a reader, okay? Covers are everything to me. And people put so much work into it. I feel like we should talk about the cover. Why not? It's part of the book. And, I love that. And they're like, you always talk about covers. Yes. Because when people are like, well, when I go on Facebook and I see a cover, I'm like, oh, I want to read that book. Oh, I'm definitely reading that book. You know what? It does. Covers are everything. So
yeah, they really entice you, I think, and I think that they convey the tone of a book. It's a whole kind of world that I'm happy to kind of stay out of in terms of. I'm not gonna necessarily. I can tell them kind of what I'm thinking, but I'm always really amazed with what cover designers come up with.
Yeah, and putting out a book is more about just, your writing of it. It's the editors, it's the people who put it together. It's a group effort, and the cover design is, another part of it that, you after doing all that work that you did, you want to see a great cover on it. So,
and it's really fun to be part of that team too. That's really fun. Like after you've had your alone time, you've done all this work by yourself. It's so gratifying to have a team come in around you and to really get what the book is about and to really, so then they add all these beautiful, exciting trimmings, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, I can imagine how much fun that is. So anyway, thank you so much, Emily. This was so much fun talking to you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm thrilled. It was fun. I could talk to you forever.
I know. That was so awesome. I'm really happy that I found you and that I got to read your book, and I can't wait for your next book. And maybe we can chat again when that comes out, because that would be fun.
I'd love to. Thank you so much for reading and for hearing me talk on and on about soap operas.
Thank you. Have a great day, Emily.
Thanks. Bye.